Welcome to the Country Code Podcast, a show for me, a show for you, a show for us, the people who maybe do not live in Silicon Valley and maybe do not have the best history with technology. And maybe you're the type of person like my dad who wants to throw his phone across the room when something happens and your phone gets stuck and you don't know what to do. Or maybe you're on your computer and you're cruising around and your computer freezes and you're stuck and you don't know how to get out of the little spinning wheel of death thing. Well, you found the right place. So thank you so much for joining me here. And today we're going to continue the conversation that we had on the previous episode and talk about AI and what you can do with AI and what it really means. And more so today, what we're going to talk about is what not to do with AI. We're all really becoming aware now of the capabilities of AI, and we're just really tapping into that little first layer, you know, and we're not even necessarily we don't know what we don't know. There's stuff happening every single day, multiple times a day. It seems you go on X and you're scrolling through and you're like, oh my gosh, like look at this thing just happened. And you know, somebody did this open source thing or this frontier project, OpenAI did this, or Anthropic did this, or 2-3 days ago is Andres Karpathy. He came out with this auto researcher thing that trains itself, an AI that trains a model that it runs for 5 minutes perfectly, 5 minutes at a time, and it just compares the notes that it had off the previous session, and if the new session was that bit just a little bit more efficient, then it discards the old session and keeps the new session and keeps going, and so you have this recursive learning. It makes it smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter. And it's the AI doing it. It's the agent. It's the whole system, in this case, that Mr. Karpathy had built. So we are just scratching the surface with AI, and so as we've, you know, let's say you know, the ChatGPT revolution kind of really started in 2023, I would say. That's, you know, AI has of course been out way before that, right? But really hit the mainstream with this tangible product that we could all use called ChatGPT. The 3.0, I think was kind of the first model that was like, wow, you know. The 2.5 and the 2 were just, you know, it's the large language model, the ChatGPT. It was doing a good job, but it was really the 3.0 that just kind of broke everything loose. And soon after that, 3.5, and then X and XAI and Elon jump in the game, where they create XAI and they create Grok, and now everybody's off to the races. So during that time, we have experienced some anomalies that we could have never experienced before. And one of those lives in the large language model and the capability and what it provides to us and what we think it provides to us. So there have been attorneys who have you know, they're practicing law and they're going in front of the court and they're doing X, Y, and Z, and they're submitting their official documents, and they've gotten busted using ChatGPT or another AI, and these people, and it's not so much, you know, for those that understand, you know, AI is a tool. Right? And it's great to use that tool. But just like other things that are tools, you don't misuse those tools in a way that negatively affects you, right? A screwdriver, for instance. A screwdriver, want to use a screwdriver to tighten up a screw, right? Maybe take a screw out. What you don't do with that screwdriver is you don't take it over to your car and start stabbing your car or doing something with it. You're going to be poking holes in it, right? Well, think of AI as kind of the same way, but think of AI as, instead of a screwdriver, think of it as a Swiss Army knife. Remember those red Swiss Army knives that we used to get? And I used to always want the one that had like the most stuff in it, that even, you know, I'd never used anything on the Swiss Army knife except the little knife and maybe the saw if I would cut some twigs off or something like that. What I did not do with that Swiss Army knife was go to the mechanic shop and get a job as a mechanic and take in my Swiss Army knife and say, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to go. They would look at me and laugh at me like I was a fool, because they say, hey, you don't have the tools available, or you're using the wrong tool, or maybe you're misusing that tool. So AI is the same way, the exact same way, in the sense of that we're using the example of these attorneys that have used AI to write a brief or an official presentation to the court. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to sit here and act like I understand all the technicalities, but I do know that lawyers have submitted official documents to the court. And the way that the courts have found some of these errors is that they say, this just doesn't exist. The judge tells them, hey, this is a great brief that you put up here, but the case doesn't exist. The case law you're referencing, Mr. Attorney, the 1995 case of Moore versus Gonzalez, does not exist. So we are finding that these AIs are very confident in some of the things that they're doing. And we have to be aware that confidence is oftentimes misguided. And we don't know really where that happens. And so this is why it's so important to use AI as a tool, especially right now. It is not necessarily, especially for us common folks. AI is not you're not going to just set it and forget it, and it's going to control your life, and it's going to take over your life and do everything perfect for you, and write all the perfect emails, write the perfect papers, if you have a company, it's not going to manage everything perfectly for you and do X, Y, and Z. Because as you know, you have gained a lot of knowledge, and you've acquired a lot of knowledge about your job, about your task, about what you do on a day-to-day basis. And there's so much nuance wrapped up in everything we do as human beings. The decisions that we make that are, for lack of a better term, just kind of an impulse decision. And maybe the decisions that we make are just more of a gut feeling. Well, AI doesn't have a gut. AI essentially only has a brain. So, and what it's been trained on and what it's been trained to do. So I like to use these. Let's go back to the example of the attorneys sending in the fake cases. If the way that the attorney, in my opinion, maybe could have done that a little bit better, instead of just fabricating a fake case, this fake document, the attorney does his job and still is the attorney and writes up everything and then submits it to the AI, sends it over and says, hey, will you proofread this? Will you tell me maybe if I could strengthen my case? Is there something in this document that I've written? I'm the source here. Is there something in this document that I could improve on? Or maybe even prior to that, before, maybe we're doing some research for the documentation that we're creating, and ask the AI, ask ChatGPT or ask Grok, say, hey, I'm doing a project on this, or I'm writing a paper on this, and the topic covers this, X, Y, Z. Here's what I know, here's what I don't know. And ask it for some recommendations. And you'll be surprised at the thoughts and the ideas that it will give you. And then you'll be able to take those and you'll be able to formulate those ideas into your own stuff. So I want to show you here. Let's see if I could. So there was this case. I found the case here as we were talking. There was one in Massachusetts. So this is from msba.org. I'm sorry, Maryland, not Massachusetts, Maryland State Bar Association. So msba.org. And there's an article by Pamela Langham written in March 4th of 2024. This says Massachusetts lawyers sanctioned for AI-generated fictitious case citations. So here it was the Maryland State Bar Association talking about what happened in Massachusetts. So Pamela writes, in a well-reasoned opinion, a court sanctioned a Massachusetts lawyer in the amount of $2,000 for citing fictitious cases in court pleadings that were produced by an AI tool. The case highlights some of the real risk of using AI in the legal profession, emphasizing that attorneys must exercise due diligence and be transparent when relying on AI-generated content. There is nothing wrong with using reliable AI technology for assistance in preparing legal documents. However, the ethical and professional rules that govern all attorneys require them to ensure the accuracy of their filings. So that's kind of just what I was saying, right? Like, hey, like you can use the tool. That's okay to use the tool. But ultimately, it's that attorney, the buck stops with that attorney, and it's up to the attorney. We still got this, you're still the professional here, and you're an officer of the court, and they trust you, and you have this duty, you have this legal obligation, not an ethical obligation and professional rules that govern what you do. And they're required to ensure the accuracy of their filings. This particular case highlights those obligations. The Honorable Brian A. Davis, an Associate Justice of the Superior Court of Massachusetts, issued the opinion on February 12th, 2024. In the opening paragraph of the order, the court stated, quote, "This decision and order addresses two disturbing developments that are adversely affecting the practice of law. The first is the emerging tendency of increasingly popular generative artificial intelligence AI systems, such as ChatGPT and Google Bard." They're still talking about Google Bard 2 years ago. "To fabricate and supply false or misleading information. The second is the tendency of some attorneys and law firms to utilize AI in the preparation of motions, pleadings, memoranda, and other court papers, then blindly filing their resulting work product in a court without first checking to see if it incorporates false or misleading information. Emphasis added." So the Honorable Brian Davis, the Associate Justice of the Superior Court of Massachusetts, and this, he's saying, notice what he says here at the end, then blindly filing their resulting work product in court without first checking to see if it incorporates false or misleading information. And so this goes back to, think about it, right? Like attorneys, lawyers, they get paid a lot of money because they provide a valuable service. And so there's a lot of people that need these attorneys' attentions and that service. So what do attorneys do? They hire people, right? Like you go hire attorney John Doe, and you know what? He's going to have a staff working for him. And part of that staff's job, some of the staff will be answering phones, doing whatever, but you're going to have paralegals and different people in the legal profession that are responsible in part for carrying out the tasks that the attorney assigns that paralegal. So the attorney may say, hey, we just got this new case in. I need you to draft this letter to so-and-so, whatever. But the attorney also, as the paralegal does the work, or the other staff members in the attorney's office does the work, it ultimately comes back to the attorney to get proofread and approved prior to sending it out, or it should be. And I'm sure that there's people in legal profession, attorneys, maybe you're listening to me right now that you're saying, I practiced law for 30 years. In the past 20 years, I've had the greatest paralegal, and I've never had to look over their work in the past 20 years. That's fantastic. But you also know that if something goes wrong and they send out something incorrect, that's coming back to you, the attorney, and not the paralegal, because you hired them and you're responsible for the work product that is produced. And that's what the judge is saying here. Okay, you blindly filed the resulting work product in court without even checking to see if it has false or misleading information. So it goes on the article here from msba.org. It talks about a Smith versus Farwell case, February 12th of 2024. It says the plaintiff and Smith filed 3 separate pleadings, motions, and memoranda in oppositions with fictitious or non-existent cases. The court, so this is what the judge is talking about here, the case where this issue arose in Smith versus Farwell, saying the plaintiff and Smith filed 3 separate pleadings, motion, and memoranda in opposition with fictitious or non-existent cases. The court inquired as to how the fictitious cases were included in the pleadings. Plaintiff's counsel, and could you imagine being the plaintiff and your lawyer doing that? You hire this guy, they're doing a good job, and you go to court and they bust you for using fake information. Plaintiff's counsel's response was that he was, quote, unfamiliar with the fictitious cases and had no idea how the cases were discovered. After further inquiry, plaintiff's counsel disclosed that the pleadings had been prepared by, quote, interns. Whereupon the court instructed plaintiff's counsel to file a written explanation of the origin of the cases. The written explanation filed by plaintiff's counsel disclosed that the cases were created by an AI system and acknowledged his lack of diligence in failing to thoroughly review the pleadings before they were filed with the court. A hearing was conducted on December 7th, 2023 for the court to determine if any sanctions were warranted in the case. At the hearing, plaintiff's counsel apologized to the court and indicated the fictitious case citations, quote, were not submitted with the intention to mislead the court, end quote. Well, that's the thing. It really doesn't matter. It happened. Goes on. He explained the pleadings had been prepared by 2 new law graduates, had not yet passed the bar, and an associate attorney. The associate attorney had admitted to plaintiff's counsel that she used an AI system for assistance in drafting the pleadings. Plaintiff's counsel further indicated that he had no idea the associate attorney had employed AI to draft the pleadings until after the court discovered the fictitious cases. He admitted that he had reviewed the pleadings for style and grammar, but not for accuracy of the citations. So it goes on. The court recognized the sincerity and honesty of the plaintiff's counsel. However, the court found the counsel's candor with the court did not exonerate him from responsibility. The court ruled that sanctions were warranted because he failed to take precautions to ensure the fictitious cases were not included in the pleadings. In the order, the court on multiple occasions cited the New York case that sanctioned a New York lawyer and his law firm in June of 2023 for citing fictitious cases. See Mata versus Avianca, Inc. in 2023, and it cites the case. Next paragraph. Maryland attorneys may want to consider Rule 1-311 MD, so Maryland General Provision, I assume. I'm not familiar with Maryland law. When studying the Smith case. Moreover, several of the Maryland attorneys' rules of professional conduct may be applicable. Maryland attorneys may want to look at Rule 19303.1, meritorious claims and contentions, and 19303.3, candor towards tribunal. Rule 19305.1, responsibilities of partners, managers, and supervisory attorneys. 19305.3, responsibilities regarding non-attorney assistants. Rule 19305.5, unauthorized practice of law. Perhaps pontificating, the court says, but more likely issuing a soft warning to all attorneys. Judge Davis ended his opinion ended his opinion in saying by stating, so the judge was not saying this. This was the author saying this last paragraph I read. So I apologize. But so now the judge is saying, quote, "It is imperative that all attorneys practicing in the courts understand that they are obligated under the rules to know whether AI technology is being used in the preparation of court papers that they plan to file in their cases, and if it is, to ensure that appropriate steps are being taken to verify the truthfulness and accuracy of any AI-generated content before the papers are submitted." To quote Judge Davis, there is a powerful lesson here. There is nothing inherently amiss about lawyers embracing AI as a powerful tool that complements their expertise. However, lawyers must remain lawyers. You still got to do your job. And read, check, and verify the facts they assert in their pleadings, their legal arguments, and case law to substantiate their positions. Legal standards require nothing less. So this concludes the article from the Maryland State Bar Association, written by Miss Pamela Langham. Thank you, Miss Langham, for writing that article, and we are happy to use it here so we can discuss the nuances of AI and how we move forward. And I understand, first we have to understand that especially, right, like each legal jurisdiction is different. And so everybody listening to this is most likely listening in a different legal jurisdiction. So nothing that we say here applies to everybody. It does not. But what we're doing is we're looking at this Massachusetts lawyer that was sanctioned, and we're looking at this case that happened in Massachusetts, and because we don't really have a whole lot of anecdotal data to go off of because this AI stuff is so new. So as we're looking at these cases in these state courts, it's going to, you can see the mindset of the judge as they're reviewing these cases where these lawyers had falsified information. Now, whether as the judge said, hey, we appreciate your candor in this case, and ultimately admitting everything that happened with how this fake case came about, it is still up to you, the attorney, to do your job. And part of your job is to ensure the accuracy of the data that you're submitting to the court. So, as we were talking about, if the attorney goes off and hires these associate attorneys, that's fantastic. And if these associate attorneys are performing these tasks for you, that's fantastic. And it's great if the associate attorneys are even using AI, as the judge says in this Massachusetts case, to embrace it and to use it as a tool. But what it's not okay to do, and let me back up. It's even okay for that AI to create a fictitious case, right? Because we're just using this tool the best we can, and sometimes tools break. Sometimes that wrench breaks. Sometimes something doesn't work exactly the way you need to, and you need to stop right there, stop at that moment, and correct it instead of proceeding and just going on with it. So when we have these AIs like ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, that are outputting this information to us that we're using, that we're then taking as the truth, as the gospel, and not even reviewing it, and then taking that and sending it forward in our professional lives, just be aware that there could be very, very, very serious consequences that arise from that. Because as you know, you're submitting that on behalf of yourself. That is you submitting that. That's not your AI submitting that. No, the AI may have created it, but ultimately it was created for you. You instructed it to do it. You're responsible. And this is going to be a new concept that as we move into this world of AI, and as our lives significantly change over the next, they've already changed so fast, just over the past few months, past year, 2-3 years, you have to remember that we are all ultimately responsible for what we do. And what we do, parts of what we are doing right now is that we are now in this world that we're generating content that is generative, right? Like, as I'm sitting here recording this podcast, I'm sitting here, we're creating this content, if you will, right? We're sitting down here, and this is just an old school, if you will. We're all digital. You know, you're listening on your podcast or phone, or you're watching the live stream right now on X, whatever you're doing. You're digital, yes, but this is real. This is not fake, at least not now. It isn't. And that's something to be aware of here in the future as we get into, as these deep fakes start changing the trajectory of the world. We're going to have a validation source to say, hey, is that video real? And that's where the concept of the ledger, the public ledger, comes in, and the blockchain as far as the verification source. But we'll get into that another time. So, but it's ultimately up to you to ensure the accuracy of whatever it is that you submit, because that is your name on the dotted line. It's not your ChatGPT's name, or it's not your Claude, your OpenClaw's name, whatever you named your OpenClaw agent. It's your responsibility. So just like with everything else, I mean, it's like, you know, with great responsibility, you know, can come, you know, great dissatisfaction, or it can't, you know, you could have great results come from that. And so now is the time for us to realize where we're at. And I'm specifically talking to the business professionals, whether you're working at a company or whether you are the business owner yourself. It is very important to survey where you are yourself, and then where your company is, right? And that also has, you know, if you're the employee at the company, right, you're not making the rules. I understand that, but you need to see the landscape and what's going on, and see who's using what, right? And try to learn. Of course, you always want to learn as much as possible, but learn the best practices, and learn the best practices to use AI within your organization, talking to the employee. And even as the business owner, we can converge the two to say, same for you, business owner, you have to find the correct ways to use AI. And if you've been listening now for the past 27 minutes, I may have scared you to death and to never use an AI because you're worried that it's going to go create something fake. I'm telling you that because it will. And that is very, very, very important to remember. And I'm telling you that because as we're now in this transition period where this great technology is now emerged, but it's going to continue to blossom and bloom into something we don't even know where it's going. It is up to us to harness the technology. If you do not harness this technology and you're listening now and 5 years into the future, you're way behind, right? So now's the time, right now in 2026, it's March 9th, 2026. If you have refused to even look into AI because it's been scary, now is the time to go to Google and Google it. And you just type your question into Google, press enter, and then just follow the results. And you know what? Maybe the determination you come to is that AI is not for you. I understand that, and that's okay. That is your decision. But for everybody else who really wants to move, you know, use this, harness the technology in a positive way, you must put up the proper safeguards. And the first proper safeguards, those guardrails, are in your mind, okay? It is all in your mind at first. It is not built within the AI, because who's ultimately responsible for the output of the AI? The two thumbs pointing right here. So it is up to us and us only. And so that means that you do need to be careful with the generative content that you produce with AI. It doesn't matter if it's a large language model producing it, writing a paper, drafting an email, pictures. There's been some very interesting cases come down here recently about generative content of the AI producing pictures and the legality of that. And, you know, we haven't even tapped into all this case law that still has to come down the pipe of everybody in all their legal jurisdictions in determining of what is and what is not acceptable by government standards, right? So not that I'm necessarily one to abide by that, but right, none of us are trying to break the law. None of us are trying to go to jail. We want to do the right thing. We always want to follow the law, and that is just
the fact, right? Because so long as we're following the law, then we sleep with a clear conscience. We wake up each morning, look in the mirror when we're brushing our teeth, we're fine with it. So that is my first big thing in all of this, is that we're going to follow the law, okay? And we're also going to stay up to date with what's happening, and so we ensure that we don't break the law. And you know what? If maybe some state, I'm speaking here in the United States, maybe there's a state that enacts some archaic AI laws, and they say, you know what? Your AI can't be used for this, and it can't be used for this, and it can't be used for that. Well, if anybody understands this technology, you really can't stop somebody from doing something, right? Like with AI, in the sense of like, oh, you can't use AI. Let's just say this. It is now illegal in the state of Massachusetts because of this case. I'm just throwing this out as a hypothetical here. This is just hypothetical. In the state of Massachusetts, it's now illegal for lawyers to use AI to help them with their legal work. Well, okay, they can. The legislature can pass that law. The governor of Massachusetts can sign the law and enact it, and whatever their processes are up there. And now we have this new, beautiful, hypothetical law in Massachusetts that makes it illegal for attorneys to use AI-generated content or AI at all in their legal profession. Great. If the attorney is sitting there on his work computer at his office, and one of the judges from the Superior Court walks in and sees him and says, hey, I noticed that you're on ChatGPT right now, and it looks like you're doing... First of all, they've probably broken a lot of ethical things, but aside from that, let's just assume that happened. Then, of course, the court would find out that attorney was using that. And let's say that the attorney maybe had a client who had retained that attorney, and the client saw the attorney, or the attorney spilled the beans to the client that they're generating this AI content for legal purposes. And then the client goes and reports the attorney for ethical violations. Of course, the issue would come up then. And then maybe the attorney is using an frontier AI company like OpenAI or Anthropic, two of the biggest, and using their models to tap into this information, whether they're using it as ChatGPT or Claude, the chat box, or maybe the attorney is more of a technical person and he went and created some API keys, and now he's doing his own program building, and he's built his own little legal program at his office and for doing this legal work. It is possible that somewhere along that chain, although maybe Anthropic or OpenAI would be breaking some trust ethical issue there, but when those API calls would be being made to the frontier company AI models, the attorney could become known that is happening if they're training their data and somehow they come back. Although the AI company would then be responsible for breaking issues, even though that it would lead back breaking ethical violations and maybe the law. But even though it would lead back to recognizing that the attorney was at fault. So I say all that to say this. The law is the law is the law, and we don't want to break the law. But also that in that case in Massachusetts, I just want to be clear and factual, and so we understand what is going on with this technology and understand that I am not advocating for anybody to break the law, especially this hypothetical law that I created, right? So if in Massachusetts that attorney is even more tech savvy, and let's say that instead of using the AI companies' API keys, Anthropic or OpenAI or Google, or name your favorite one here, instead of doing that, the attorney goes and he is savvy enough and downloads his own local AI model. What is local AI? Well, local in the terms of computing and development is just local, right? It is really where you're at. And when we're talking about development and AI, when we're talking about having a local model, we're talking about that model being installed at least for me, I'm on my laptop. It is installed on my computer. This AI model, this big, all this information, this large language model that's been fed these billions and billions and billions and billions of parameters, all lives on my laptop. And so that is a local AI model. Now, local does not always technically mean on the device itself, right? If you're like on a local network or something like that, you can have a network that's local. So you have computers spread out. And so you could have computers that are on the same network, but it's still local. The point being is that we are not tapping into an external service. We're not tapping into an OpenAI GPT 5.3 or GPT 5.4 that just recently came out. We're not tapping into those via the API key. So by having a local model, this attorney, having a local model installed on his machine, now the attorney could develop a program that would then do whatever the attorney had it do, and it would do it when the API calls were being made, when the AI model was being called in the program, when the program's running, and if you've built in AI into a program, the program operates as it's been programmed to do. And inside of that program, inside of this think of the program as just being like a massive warehouse, okay, or a massive shop. But let's just think of it as a big shop or a warehouse where there's this big building. That's the program, okay? The big building is the program itself. We have just this big thing. And then inside of all of that, inside of the big building, inside of the program, we have all these modular things that are placed around the program that we've built. And a part of that modular process or the modular structure of the things we've built, one of those things that we'll build when we're building AI programs, and it's literally infinite. There's no one way. You could do it as many different ways as you want to and build it's an infinite way to build. Because there's no limit, just like songs, right? Like, well, how many songs can there be? As many as you can think. And then there's somebody else that comes around with a new, and their mind thinks of different things. So however we want to build this. So in the warehouse example, the warehouse is the program. We have our boxes inside the warehouse that do these different things, or maybe we have, maybe it's a factory. A factory would probably be a better example. Let's have a warehouse, a factory, and inside this factory, there's all this stuff going on, production going on. Well, in factories, if you spent time in factories, you know that factories move, factories doing things, but each part of the factory has its own little specific purpose, right? And not all of the factory is always operating, right? For instance, maybe there's conveyor belts in the factory. And maybe those conveyor belts aren't always used because you're not always transferring product from point A to point B or C or whatever it is. And maybe sometimes the loading dock is closed because you don't always have trucks coming in to drop off or take away or whatever it is. Let's just say drop off. We want to ingress things. And so when we are in the AI world and the factory is our program, and the conveyor belt and all the stuff operating inside of the factory is our program, then one of the things that we can implement as part of our program is to bring in an AI channel to feed into the program that could then take our AI consciousness, if you will. I'm using that term very, very loosely, but take that AI consciousness, if you will, and implement it into the program to give your program life, to where it's no longer just hard-coded and doing whatever it's programmed and coded to do. That when we bring in this AI channel, that our program's set up to accept it, of course, and we can only use the AI and its and purposeful means within our program. We can't just create a program and then connect an AI to it and be like, hey, run the program. If there's no way for the AI to integrate and connect through the proper routes and the APIs within the internal program, then it won't work. But I say all that to say this. The AI being the brain of the program, it does not matter if that AI is coming from an OpenAI source, an external source, Anthropic, OpenAI and Anthropic. These are two paid for-profit companies. Well, OpenAI started off as a nonprofit, but we're not going to get into that. But these are companies that make billions and billions and billions of dollars, and that so they're the big AI companies. There's many of them. But so your program doesn't really care whether that AI information comes from Anthropic that you paid for, that is an external thing that we're communicating to, or if your program is using an internal AI system, an internal AI model that you yourself downloaded to your local machine, in this case, the laptop or your computer. And then that is the AI model that feeds into your program. So think about it. If you have a program that you have developed and that program lives on your local machine, and let's say we've advanced, we're now using Claude. I keep wanting to say Claude bot because that's what it was initially called. OpenClaw, our agent, which I highly recommend if you have not checked out OpenClaw, definitely check out OpenClaw. I'll be talking about it probably every episode. Definitely check it out because it's well worth your time. But if the program is using the AI that you have installed, then that is going to be the one that it feeds off of. So if your program is developed on your local machine, on your laptop, and on that same laptop or the same computer, you have also downloaded the AI model, right? You can go, if you happen to have more space on your computer, you got a little bit of a hopped up system, and if you're using a Mac architecture, using the the Apple silicone, whether it's really the M1, M2, M3, M4 now, it's going to be the M5 or the M5. Those you'll be capable completely of running OpenClaw, and running an AI model. Right now, I'm running off of a 3-year-old MacBook Pro. So, and I have multiple local AI models here, and they function just fine. Now the local models, when you download a local model, so there's different models that you can download, and just go to Google and type in search free open source AIs. So what we're referring to right now, when I say local model AIs, the way that they can become local is that they're open source. And that means that the code itself has been, or that the model itself has been open source. And so whoever did it, our open source code bases they can come from an individual like OpenClaw with Peter Steinberger, or it can come from a company like OpenAI that they release an open source product, model or something like that. Now, or it doesn't have to be an AI company, right? It can be any company that releases an open source thing. X has open sourced some of their algorithm. Tesla has open sourced some of their information just so it becomes more readily available for public use, and it's easier for us to use. So, but just if you want to have a local AI on your computer, you can go and Google it. And, one of the ones I recommend, there's a couple, Qwen, Qwen. There's open source Qwen models. There's open source DeepSeek models, DeepSeek R2 or R1. And so, but these models have to, they are computationally intensive. So you need a computer capable of running them, right? It doesn't mean we have to have supercomputers, but you can't have a 10-year-old laptop and think you're going to be running an open source system natively on your laptop. So first, in order to do that, you have to have a computer capable, and it's the RAM. So you have to have the storage, of course, right? Which is the hard drive, because these models are big. They take up a lot of space. They're in a big box. But so you got to carry in that big box and install it on your computer, which takes up a lot of space. But then that big box requires a lot of memory to run through, which is your RAM, your random access memory, which is also measured in, data, gigabytes. So, so like you can have a computer with, base Apple stuff now, 256 gigabyte hard drive. That's how much information can be stored on it. And then 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's the processing memory of your computer. And that's how much information it can process all at once. Once you get over that that threshold of 16 gigabytes or whatever the RAM limit is, then it can't do anything more after that. And so with AI, the models are not only big, you got to carry them in a big box and install them on your hard drive. So they take up a lot of space, gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes, but also they require a lot of RAM usage. So the direction that this stuff's going today, I'm going to get, in the future, I believe that our own compute, the compute that we own, meaning what can your computer do? Can your computer, how much data do you have available on your computer? What is your computer's RAM? Because as we've seen, anybody paying attention over the past really like 15 years, 10 years for sure, 15 years maybe, that we've all seen this migration to the cloud, right? Whereas before this concept of the cloud existed, which all the cloud is, there's nothing that lives in a cloud, okay? Nothing lives in a cloud and in outer space just sitting there floating around in the ether. No. The cloud is basically just decentralized servers or servers around the world or whatever location that information is stored on, right? So if you push your stuff from your computer to the cloud, and let's just say it's Apple or Dropbox or whatever it is, Cloudflare if you're developing, that is just going to live on a server somewhere, actually multiple servers somewhere around the world in most cases. And we don't determine that. The companies that we hire as a service, Dropbox and Apple, they're the ones that do this from their business perspective. And so when they create these cloud networks around the world, they're really just data centers, right? And at the end of the day, all a data center really is just storage, right? And compute. And unless they're doing something inside that data center, but basically it's just storage. And so we're sending our information just to be stored there in the cloud, so it sits there across these servers. So think about it. Let's say that you live in Michigan and you use Dropbox and you use Dropbox cloud service, and you just, so it's always available. And let's say that you head down to Miami for a work conference or for vacation, and you're down in Miami, and it just so happens that Dropbox has a cloud service, a distribution point, a CDN, a content delivery network, a data center, whatever they want to use. They have that information distributed as part of their cloud environment. They have it as a physical location in Fort Lauderdale. Well, Fort Lauderdale is just 10, 15, 20 miles north of Miami. So if you go to Miami, you leave Michigan, fly to Miami, go down there, and you hop on to Dropbox. Well, your Dropbox is going to be pulling from the closest location, right? So the way it's designed, and then let's say, for hypothetical purposes, that you travel to Greece. And let's say in Greece, you're on the coast sitting there having a cocktail, or maybe you're in the red flowy dress and getting your pictures taken. Let's say in Greece, you also need to go to your Dropbox and do something. Well, when you go into your Dropbox in Greece, it just so happens that Dropbox has a distribution point in Athens. I don't know that. I'm just saying this for hypothetical purposes, but let's just say that it's in Athens. So now you're a Michigander, right? I think that's what we call y'all. Or you call yourself. So you're a Michigander, and you work and you live up in Michigan. So you know what, that data center up there is in Detroit, or that cloud distribution point is in Detroit right there. So you're only on the coast of Lake Michigan, but you're pulling from the data center in Detroit. So the information only has a very short place to go, right? Lake Michigan, Detroit, boom, boom. That's fast, right? Now, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if you were doing a blog, you were working on a blog, or you're doing something, you were tapping into whatever server it was and wherever that company had that server located. That may have been in San Diego, California. So it didn't matter if you were in Michigan 25 years ago. If the server of the company that you were using was in San Diego, California, because that's where the information would have been hosted at, way out on the West Coast. And you're way up here in Michigan. And yes, this stuff moves fast, right? But when we're talking about milliseconds and then getting on into seconds being a delay, that's where part of our delays come in. And so this content of the cloud and CDN, content delivery networks, that we just laid out is for that. If in today's age, you go from Michigan to Miami and you're on the beach, now in Miami, you're just going from Miami to Fort Lauderdale. And that's all that information has to travel to, because Dropbox has distribution centers, a content delivery network scattered around the world. And so it doesn't matter if you go to Miami, you got that data center in our case, that in our hypothetical, that's just right in Fort Lauderdale, or if you're sitting on the coast of Greece, you had the data distribution point, the CDN, the server in Athens. So no matter where you go nowadays, it's all closely connected, right? So with the cloud, it is a great resource to be able to have your information distributed. But it is also so of course there's good and bad parts, right? And the good part about the cloud is that your data, so long as you keep up and pay with your plan, right? I guess that would be a con. But the good part about it is that your data is always there, right? So let's say that a horrific incident happened and your office building burnt to the ground. And your office building was where your work computer was. It had all your stuff on it, that had all your information. If you're using cloud services, well, that information is safe. Because even though your office burned down and your computer was inside of it, and that's where all the work was being done, when you're doing the work, that data is being distributed throughout the world to wherever the company tells it to go, wherever they have distribution points. And that data is going to be saved throughout those distribution points. And so that's really an excellent thing to have, right? Like, we want to have our data backed up, of course. But the bad side to that with the cloud is that to store data costs money. So it's not free. You have to pay these companies to back up and store your data. And then the other side to that is if you're working with like large files and documents, or they don't even have to be large files and documents, but if you have 200 gigabytes worth of data that lives in the cloud, that's your working body of knowledge, everything that you do in your business lives in the cloud, then you have to go and retrieve that information a lot of times. So the benefit is that the cloud will free up our local device, our computer, our desktop or our laptop. And it will free up that storage so your computer has space and the hard drive doesn't get bogged down. So you can keep doing things, keep storing information, keep doing your local stuff that you do on a day-to-day basis, your daily stuff you do on a day-to-day basis. The cloud, when we're storing our stuff in the cloud, it allows us to free up space, dedicated space on our hard drive, on our local machine's hard drive, your actual desktop, your actual laptop, the one you're touching has a hard drive in it, which is where that information would traditionally be stored at. But since we're using the cloud, we have to send that information in the cloud to where it's stored at. Well, when it's stored in the cloud, oftentimes our computer will only leave you with a preview of it. And you may think, well, if I get the preview, then I got the file. No. So it may be that if you're using the cloud like Dropbox or any other thing and you have a bunch of information in the cloud, that it becomes frustrating when it's your information, you're trying to go into Dropbox, you're trying to go into whatever it is, and you're trying to retrieve that information. And your computer's telling you, hey, it's going to be another 30 minutes to download or another hour to download, and you're stuck. So that is one of the cons, if you will, to having your information stored in the cloud, is that you have to many times re-download it, even though it's your information, right? And we see this a lot of times. If you have an iPhone, if you have an iPad, and you subscribe to Apple's iCloud Drive, I believe it's called. They've changed the name over the years. And so, or at least I think they have. And so, but with iCloud Drive, your photos are a part of that. So, we take tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and thousands of photos with our phones. And so, like right here, I only have 7,147 photos on this phone. But on my other phone, I had like 45,000, but that one was in the cloud, and then I couldn't. But that's what I was going to say, is that on my other phone, I had 45,000 photos or something, and they were all there, and I could scroll through and like even see like the video previews. But when you'd go to watch a video, like you'd go to press play and watch the video, it would tell me one of two things. That it can't, like it's a corrupted file. And I'm like, well, that sucks. And then B, it would have to re-download that photo or that video. And if you got, a video that's a minute and 30 seconds long and shot in 4K, that's some data. And unfortunately, Apple doesn't, yes, they store it in the cloud, but they're not so concerned to get it too fast to you back from the cloud, right? So it's not the fastest data speed to get it back onto your phone or back onto your computer. And once again, it depends on, there's so many variables in play. Everything we're talking about everything we talk about is just basically one big variable, because we're all in different situations. We're all in, different countries, different states, we're using different technology. I use Mac OS exclusively. There's people who use Windows, nothing wrong with that. There's people who use Linux, great, fantastic. But so we're all in a little bit different space, right? And that's where it talks about due diligence. We have to have the due diligence to, if you want to improve, right? And if you're now with me listening this far, you're definitely wanting to improve because you find something I've said interesting. And so if you are one that wants to improve, then you have to do your due diligence to make that happen. And you have to go do the research, because what I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if it's with the OpenClaw thing is a perfect example, right? I've installed OpenClaw on 4 or 5 machines personally. And yes, I'm no genius by any means, but I've also know a little bit about technology. And with each of the OpenClaw instances that I set up, I came into a unique error each time, or a unique issue that I was just completely unaware of. I don't even know. This program, OpenClaw, at the time it was ClaudeBot. This is such a novel program. You don't even know, you can't go to Google. You can't be like go to Google and like, hey, OpenClaw program, this error, enter, and it pop up all the web pages results of everything that people have gone through over the years and what they've. No, it's new. So then what do? Well, you just start grinding, and you have to figure out a starting point, right? And so my starting point of when I encounter errors of no matter what it is, I've kind of gotten away from this a little bit more recently because I've just, with OpenClaw and using Claude Code so much and Codex, I'm not relying as much on Grok, right? But I talk to Grok every single day. And one of the things that's great about Grok is that if you're working with existing programs that are, there's a large body of work. There's years and years and years of information behind it. Well, Grok should have a great working knowledge of exactly how that program works. So you can, if you're using terminal or if you're using a web page, it doesn't matter, and you get an error. And on that website, you're trying to do something and it says, hey, I got an error. Or the web page tells you, hey, you can't proceed. There's this error. And you know what? I get it. The error might say, give you a 400 something error and tell you something about something that you don't understand. And it gives you this path link and you don't know what it's talking about. And then there's just computer language that far along. And you're like, I don't even know what this is saying. Instead of pressing the X button, and instead of Xing that out, if you want to move forward, here's what you do. You go to where you found that error. And I'm just going to say that for in this case, let's just say that we're working on this program and now we're back at this and I have an error. And let's just say that right here, well-reasoned opinion was actually an error that was written out long, and it said all this stuff. Well, what I would do is I would copy that. And I would just say, okay, I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to go into Grok and I'm going to paste that into Grok and press enter. I might if you have an ongoing conversation with Grok going, then you can just go and paste enter. But it's always good to give the AI model context, right? Because if you just paste it in, it might have an idea of what you're doing depending on the error code and what it says, but it might have no idea what you're doing and have to look through thousands and thousands of different examples of similar error codes and then think of, okay, you're doing this one, but it's not the one you're doing. So if you can give Grok context as far as, okay, Grok, I'm working on program A, and program A took me to www.thebestwebsite.com. And when I went there and I came down and I was doing this, I did this, and I got an error code. And the error's telling me this. Copy that error and paste it into Grok and press enter. And Grok will give you a formula as to which you can follow. Actually, it will probably give you, sometimes it will tell you, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. Sometimes it will say, I found it. What the issue that you're facing is this, and here's what you need to do. And if we're talking about something that Grok has a great working knowledge of, I can assure you Grok is probably right. So follow the instructions, right? But also in the back of your mind, understand that Grok's not always right. So it's almost like sleeping with one eye open, right? That's kind of how I just have to think about it. Like if we're working with Grok or really any AI, right? Like we're sleeping with one eye open because we trust it in a sense, but we always got to be awake. And it's the same thing with Grok, right? And then especially, or ChatGPT or any AI, we trust it, but we also verify it, right? Now, if we're developing or we're doing something and we're trying to fix errors, well, you know what? If you don't know what you don't know, and I think that that's a great lesson for all of us, that we all need to understand we don't know what we don't know. And I can tell you the smartest person in the world about all this stuff doesn't know everything. So we don't know what we don't know, and we rely on a lot of external sources and external information to push us along and get us going. and help us. And that's completely okay. And just like that judge in that Massachusetts case that we reviewed earlier in the podcast, the judge wasn't telling the plaintiff's counsel, hey, you screwed up because you used AI and you were wrong. That's not what the judge said. The judge said that this tool that you used was incorrect, and ultimately, it's your responsibility to ensure its accuracy of whatever that you submit to the court. And that's that. So it's ultimately up to us. And we have to be the ones, we're the shepherds, right? We're the shepherds of these AI sheep. And we have to be the ones to lead them into the right direction, right? And part of being a shepherd is the great reward of being with your flock. But ultimately, the shepherd is in charge, right? And ultimately, if something goes wrong with the flock, it's the shepherd's fault, right? So we are the shepherds of the AI, and we are going to be the ones that take it in to the future and use it for ways that benefit ourselves, greater humanity, the greater good for people. And you know what? No matter what period you lived on this earth, there have always been trials and tribulations facing humanity. And, there's the history of humanity. If you look at it one side, it's a very dark history. And then on the other side, it's a very bright and prosperous history where there's been some unfortunate things that have occurred. So, it's not to say that we're going to sit here and, with our head in the sand and be blind to whatever's going on. And, AI, there are some very real concerns about it. But most of those concerns have nothing to do with me and you and are completely out of our control. Not to get off on this, but for instance, about military use of autonomous deadly weapons powered by AI, right? I have my thoughts about it, and I'm sure you do too. And we can vote, maybe something there and push our voice that way, but the reality is ain't none of us going to change that reality. And we can only hope that the leaders that we've elected around the world, have some clarity in their consciousness to understand the gravity of the tools and the technology that they are truly grappling with. Because most of these people who are making these decisions at the highest levels of government around the world, most of them have no clue about anything with technology, much less AI, right? Just because you're a tech person doesn't mean you know jack squat about AI. Let me tell you that. And that should be very, very comforting to you and to us listening and doing this podcast, because we are doing this I'm doing this for the regular folks, for the folks that, they see what's happening and they see the change taking place and they see this technology and they may not know how to use it, but you also understand that this technology it is undeniable. And it's undeniable that if you can harness it and understand it, first you have to understand it to harness it. If you can understand it, then you can harness it, then you can implement it, and then you can build. And so us dummies living out in the country that, we may not be in Silicon Valley and we may not have Sequoia capital behind us to do whatever it is, that's fine. What we're trying to do is we're trying to improve our lives, improve the lives of those around us, and make the world a better place. And I said my previous comments about, just because you know about software or technology does not necessarily mean you know about AI. That should be very comforting to us because it is a level playing field. Right now, I was talking to a friend about this recently. right now you have people that have built massive moats, if you will, as far as companies and then just individuals around what they've built for the past 25, 30, 40 years, 50 years in some cases, right? And so those people have built that moat and they've relied on that moat, and good for them. I'm not knocking them. This is fantastic. It's brought us to the point to where we are now. But the reality is that that moat has now had the water rise, or the water has just completely receded. There is no moat anymore. And now that is the influx of AI, and now we have just all this stuff that is there's a lot of noise with AI, and that's the hard part about it. It's discerning what's the noise versus what's really tangible and what can I use. Is this, every day there's a dozen different things. The greatest this today, new benchmarks. Today, OpenAI comes out with 5.3, and then just a few weeks later 5.4, and then Anthropic comes out with Claude, whatever, Opus 4.6, and it just keeps going and it keeps going, and then and then it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And it's hard to not be interested in all that stuff. But these people that have built their careers and their massive businesses, good for them. The smart ones are leveraging the AI right along with us. The not so smart ones, which I don't know these people, but I can guarantee you they're out there. The not so smart ones are sitting on the beach in Miami, probably sitting there drinking a cocktail right now, not giving a crap about their business. They don't care about AI. Why do I need AI? I got my business. It's working perfectly for me. Even, hey, we got a little tech involved in our company, but I paid the IT guy to do that. We're doing business. We're making, 150 million a year. We might be, however, you're making a ton of great. Though it's that mindset that gives me and you the opportunity, because that mindset is prevalent out there, and it gives us an opportunity from a business standpoint to break down some of the barriers. And because if the barriers in many cases is competition, right? Barriers are not always financial or legal. I mean, barriers can be competition, right? Like look at CPG, right? Like if you're a CPG company, okay, you can put out something, but there's millions of other companies around the world that are doing the exact same thing to you. How do you differentiate that, right? So, but this is a barrier that these people are facing, and it allows us, because they're happy with what they've done. They're happy with their business. The businesses, they haven't touched their business the past 15, 20 years. There's no reason to change anything now. Great. And that's where our opportunity comes in. And our opportunity also comes in not just from people resting on their laurels. It comes in from the novelty of everything that is being created right now. There are things happening right this instant that literally were not thought about, at least in the public domain, until a few days ago. And this is happening every week, that something happens. And so my interests are making sure that me and you, that we stay up to speed on what the latest happenings of technology in the AI world is. Because there are things happening right now that if you take advantage of it, it could truly change your life. And I say that not because I pontificate about that, or my cousin did it, or I saw my parents did it. It's the way that I grew up. Nope. Actually, I grew up completely the opposite of what you see me doing now. And it wasn't until I took this path myself, as far as going and doing everything and with technology and everything that we've built, that I've seen how it works, and I've seen that it does work, and I've seen that you can be in any moment in your life. In any moment in your life. It doesn't matter if you're a teenager listening in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and you can make the change. And you can use the technology, and you can use the social media, and you can use all the free sources out there that are available. There's really no sense to pay for anything on the internet anymore. It's just not, right? So there's no more excuse of I couldn't find it, or I had to pay for this. There was I was about to do it, but it was a paid for thing. No. If you have a phone, you're set. You can get on the internet, right? And you can go and you can search things, and you can go create accounts, and you can go create free accounts. You can go create free eBay accounts, and you can take pictures, and you can sell things, and you can make money. You can go to Google, ask it questions, absolutely free. You can go create a free X account, go to Grok and ask Grok questions. You can go do anything that your little mind is willing to do. And I don't mean that as a disrespect. I'm not saying little mind is your little minded. No, I should not have said it that way. But I'm just saying you can do anything that you put your big mind to do, because we all have big minds. We all do. I am totally convinced of that. I don't think that there's somebody out there that's just incapable, unless you got a serious mental, issue that is outside the realms of this conversation. And so all of us have the capability to do any of this stuff, right? And it's up to us to find it within us to want to do it. And you know what? If you're happy at where you are, and you're just wanting to get a little bit more knowledge about whatever it is, maybe you're retired and you just you're interested in AI, which is why you're listening to this. Thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate that. And we're going to walk through all this stuff as we move forward into the show, and as the show goes on into weeks, months, years. But also, I'm also talking to the person that really wants to make real changes in their life, and how you can use this, and how you can just harness technology in general, and see the best practices out there, or practices of what different people use, from myself, other people in different spaces, and how you can break away from the monotony of what you've been doing your whole life, right? Many of us get pushed into positions, we don't even realize it, and now we're 26 years old, and we say, how the heck did I get here? I did not want to be working in this position. I did not want to live in this state, in this city. I did not want to do this. I actually wanted to be a musician, and instead I'm working in some accounting firm, right? Or instead, you're a musician because that's all you could do. And great, I love music. I play music too. But maybe you want to work in an accounting firm. There's good news, and that anything that you want to do, you can do it. And the greatest news now is that the highs and the lows have squeezed out everything in the middle, and now it's up to you to make that decision to take the next step, right? And the next step is just doing it, right? There's talkers, and then there's doers. And of course, I know this in my own life, because there's been times where I'm just a talker, right? And I'll be sitting there, and I'll be thinking of something. I'll be maybe days, weeks, months, years thinking, talking about it, may even talk to other people about it. Hey, great idea. I got this great idea. Oh, it sounds great, Zane. Yeah. That's all you do is talk about it, right? We can't be talkers. We have to be doers. And we have to be willing to understand that when we're doers, that we reach failure and error more times than success. But really and truly, I would say that the failures and errors should be an n-1, right? So your failures and errors should always be one less than your successes, Because if you're pushing through just in a programmatic perspective, you push through issue 1, or you get to issue 1, you find an error, that's error 1, and then you find the solution, and you've reached the solution, and you go forth and you reach all these errors, and then finally on the other side is the success. And so you should always have one-up success on those errors. But you can't do that unless you're working through those errors. And there's errors and failures every step of the way. And you cannot be the person to just sit there and press the little red X button and close it out and just say, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. Because you're going to close the screen on your computer, you're going to walk out of the office and you're going to forget about it. You're going to go home. And tomorrow you're going to come in, you're going to open the laptop, or you're not going to open the laptop. You're going to go to Facebook, you're going to go to Twitter, and you're going to doom scroll and see all the bad stuff happen in the world. And you're going to think the world sucks. And you're not going to care about what you're doing. So do not press the red X. Because pressing the red X, metaphorically speaking, is quitting on yourself. And you can't quit on yourself in this. The stakes are too huge. I promise you, the stakes are too huge. So if you've listened to me for this long, an hour and 20 minutes, thank you so, so much. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Doing this hit me because I've helped so many people over the years in different areas of just basic rudimentary technology stuff. And then as, my interest grew and I started doing my own stuff and now it's AI and deep into this. And of course I love it. And, I'm pretty deep into it. And now people around me are seeing what's going on and they're saying, hey, what, how? Like, how are you doing this? Well, it's not me doing it. Actually, it's my agent and my, Claude Code and whoever else I'm talking to, Claude, OpenClaw. But I had the knowledge and I had the grit, as Carpathy said. Not Carpathy. It was, the Reddit CEO, Ahmed, or whatever. Don't know his name. I'm not familiar with it. But the Reddit CEO in an interview talking about, he's saying, you don't need to be as a matter of fact, being a tech person is going to set you back in this, being a software engineer. He goes, you have to have the grit to push through. And that's exactly what we're saying here, is that you have to have the grit to push through on something that you're unfamiliar about. Because every error that we come across, right, in this is an unfamiliarity. And if we could fix that error, we'd remediate it and we'd move past it. But we can't fix that error because we don't have the knowledge yet, right? So we have to find it and we have to just go do it. And before it was going to Google, which great. I used to, when I set up my first Ethereum EVM, it took me weeks, and I was living in the developer forums and going to Google and just the, page 10 of Google search results trying to find this stuff. And it was great. I was so grateful that I had that technology available so I could set up my own node. But that was just a few years ago. Now we're interfacing and talking to agents. All right. You're not interfacing and talking to an agent if you're talking to ChatGPT or talking to Grok just on the web dashboard, right? You need to, that's great. If it's all you do and you don't mess with AI at all, yes, use Grok, use ChatGPT. I'm not saying not to, because I use those. But what I'm saying is if you really, really, really want to start having fun with it, you need to be working with agents. And you do that by OpenClaw. Or there's numerous ways to interface with agents. And you can do it through the frontier providers. By frontier providers, the guys out at front of the research, OpenAI and Anthropic. OpenAI has Codex. And so you can use Codex, which is a CLI, a command line interface program. And it is an agentic programming platform. Anthropic has their model, which is called, or their program called Claude Code, which incorporates their AI models, and you can use Claude Code as an agentic resource. It is it is an agents, and you can have multiple agents, you can have multiple sessions, you can spin up sub agents. It will spin up sub agents, but the point being is that it's agents. And so, really for the past few years, the conversation has been AGI, right? Artificial General Intelligence, which means that, hey, that's when it all happens. That's actually like when it's like really AI, not just like humans prompting the AI and getting the large language models together based off of what it's trained to do. No. The AGI concept is that we have actually reached the true AI standpoint of that it's doing everything on its own and it's improving on its own. And many of the smartest people have all thought about how that's going to happen. I have no clue, but it is kind of becoming self-apparent that the path to AGI is agents. And so, because agents, if you can spin up infinite agents and you can have them all working and they're all understanding the task and they can all be connected through a thread, then we're talking about, true potential to have AGI. And so I wouldn't be surprised here within, I mean, it's really already happening, right? It's just not at scale, right? Like even with what Carpathy released the other day with auto research, just an open source project he was messing around with just to play with. Like it's a rudimentary concept in the form of AI, but it's profound in what he's put together and all the thought about how all these simple little pieces come together and how they operate and how they run into perpetuity. And so it's going to be a very, very, very exciting next few weeks, next few months, next few years. And we're going to be right here at the forefront of it here on the Country Code Podcast. So you stay with us, and thank you so much for being here this time. Come back next time, and we'll be talking again. See ya.